speaking of Tamia, like obviously for a lot of professional athletes, it seems like the trying times that can sometimes come in marriages are through injury and retirement. Okay? Because suddenly you sort of have to relearn each other because you've retired. You mentioned that you had some dark moments when you were going through this lengthy injury fight that you had. What kind of impact did you feel like that had on you and Tamia's marriage?
Well, I think the marriage actually helped me get through it, and I don't think I was consciously aware of it in real time. But I think well, first of all, we get married, and then was it sickness and through health, and we tested that vow. But yeah, I mean, I think having your partner, having your wife, your spouse, I think to help you get through it, to distract you, and then starting a family and then being a parent, that provided some balance that was needed, and also a sense of purpose and a sense of what's real, or what's important, I guess, ultimately. And so I don't think I understood it at the time, but I think looking back at it, yeah, having her strength, and her, and then her life and her career and her perspective, and sometimes you come home, but she didn't care. I mean, she cared, but she didn't, like, you have other things you're worried about. It's you're gonna get the diapers over here. You're gonna change this baby, and all of that. So all of that, we were a new sort of newlywed going through, an incredible strain, as you said, with an injury. I never looked at that, injuries and retirement. And then she, not to tell her story, but she went through some health issues, and that really kind of inspired me, just sort of seeing how she attacked that, and how just hearing about that news, and what that, not knowing or not being totally informed of what MS is, and then how she went about that, and being a wife, a mother, a career woman, still staying active. So that helped me get through it in a lot of ways. And then years, when I was writing the book, and probably during COVID, and now all these things for me are resurfacing, and I'm dealing with, and I'm sharing. And she was like, like, I'm glad that you're human, because I was like, I'm sitting there watching you go through this, and you were just like a machine, and you were just, and so it was interesting to hear her perspective on going through some of that. But it bothered me more than I thought it did. And I thought, okay, I overcame it, like, move on. 9 years playing post injury, that's great. But I think deep down subconsciously, this is a thing that I did really well, and I was dominant in, and I was on a trajectory, and I didn't get a chance to see that through, and that was hard to accept. But 20 years later, like, that's what was crazy. And but yeah, she has helped me all the way through, particularly going through that period of time. And it wasn't easy for me. And look, the bottom line is, and you brought her up. I don't think spouses of professional athletes get enough credit, and just how difficult that can be. I think we all see the perks that come with it, and there's some perks, and obviously we all are aware of those. But I think, one, having a career, and most spouses aren't R&B singers, but let's say you're a doctor, a lawyer, whatever it is you want to do. Like, all of a sudden, there's always that threat of being traded, signing someplace else. And so I think a lot of times work can give you a sense of purpose, and you can get lost sometimes in your spouse's shadow, if you will. My wife, I'll be honest with you, she didn't want to leave Detroit. And I've heard people say, or imply that, we left Detroit because she wanted to pursue her music career. well, Orlando's not the place to go if
I
you're
was
an
gonna
R&B
say it's
singer.
not
Yeah.
like Orlando is like the second coming of Motown. Like what
Yeah.
is it
I mean,
like?
like, okay, if we go
No,
to Atlanta or New York or
or
LA,
Los Angeles, yeah.
yeah, and then her from, her being from, from up there, from Windsor, like she, I think, actually enjoyed leaving LA to come back to Detroit, and then all of a sudden, we moved to Orlando. So, but I mean, that's just like, then all of a sudden one day I'm like, hey, I want to go to Phoenix, and she's like, I've never been to Phoenix. Like, so I don't know, I feel like there's a sacrifice that the spouses go through that a lot of people, fans out there, don't fully understand or appreciate. And certainly, she was, as my mom would say, she was Nurse Betty, um, through a lot of it. And funny story, I know it's kind of graphic, but when you're on crutches a lot, like I was for 4 years, you have those portable urinals, and so she used to hate to have to dump them out, and so once I finally got healthy, I was like, oh, this is convenient. I want to keep the urinal. And she was like, no. And so every time I bought one, somehow it would disappear. Anyway, I'm sorry for being graphic.
No, that is actually great, but that's marriage. That's what you signed up for, is that you signed up for those moments where a portable urinal may be involved. You know?
It put a lot of strain on our marriage. That's for sure.
Now, speaking of which, and just talking about you guys as marriage, you'll appreciate this. As the time we're recording this, I just left Las Vegas, where I saw Anita Baker in concert, who famously hooked you guys up. But what I didn't know about your origin story with Tamia is that the first time you talked to her was in a club. I mean, you weren't actually at the club. She was at the club where some of your friends were, and you got on the phone and convinced her somehow that you were actually you. Okay. And then, you guys went on a date the next day, and sort of things happened from there. What the hell did you say to her on the phone that would get her to actually, one, believe it was you, and two, go out on a date with you on top of that?
I had to kick the old Willie Bobo. I had to. No, I was joking.
These kids don't know nothing about Willie Bobo.
Yeah, I know. I know it's crazy because we had just lost in the playoffs. We lost to Orlando '96, and so at that point I didn't want to go. I didn't want to be out and about. I didn't want to go to Legends.
Shout out to Legends. Detroiters know.
That was my spot. But nah, so maybe a couple of weeks later, my boys they went to this party. It was, I think, Andre Harrell was throwing a party, the late Andre Harrell, and unbeknownst to all of us, Tamia was there as a judge for a talent show. And obviously at that point I knew who she was. I didn't know that Anita had planted a seed and mentioned me to her, because I met Anita, and Anita then met her like a week later at the Soul Train Awards. And so I was telling Anita, you got to hook me up with somebody. Well, actually, Anita was being nosy and like, you date somebody, and and I'm just like, I'm not gonna find who I want, and blah blah blah, and whatever. And so I'm not thinking anything of it. And so, yeah, my friend called me. It's like, yo, that girl Tamia is here, and he gives her the phone. Now, knowing her, and her, like, first of all, I can't believe she just took somebody's phone and randomly talked to him. And we spoke. It was loud. It was like an after party. And then I remember I told my buddy, I was like, hey man, like, give her my number and keep her away from, so-and-so. And so I didn't think anything of it. So they come back afterwards. We're in the house just chilling, listening to music, and she calls. And so then we talk until morning. Basically, we talk, and so that's a good first sign, But then we set up, a date. I'm going to pick her up in Windsor. We're going to go to Greektown and go to Fishbones, and then go see a movie. And so, so when I remember I'm driving over, I'm like, how does she still doesn't know that it's me. Some random dude gave her a phone at a party and put me on the phone with her. And now here we are. And so anyway, I mean, whatever I said, I don't know what I said, but it worked. And, here we are 26 years later. Is that right? 26 years later, which is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, man, he must have been spitting some hella game. Cause I'm
Oh, that's
like,
funny.
boy,
That's funny.
I was like,
Yeah,
she had to be, you had to be spending something. So it obviously worked. I mean, I know that you all, because I loved your Black Love episode that you guys did. I know you get asked a lot about your secret and your keys to marriage because you guys have been married so long, and to be two high profile people, it's even harder to do. But if you had to pinpoint a couple of things where you felt like have really been beneficial to you in staying committed and being married, what would you say those were?
yeah. We did the Black Love series, and it's funny because like I felt like we didn't. I don't know. Like I don't know. We've watched the series. It's a great series. I think they do a great job with it. But um, I feel like we're essentially winging it. I mean, everyone's thinking, okay, Black love and you guys this and relationship goals. What are y'all doing? Man, we don't know. We're just like literally like. I mean, I'll say this: every relationship is different. And my parents been married 50 plus years, and how they live, how they interact, how they deal with money, like all is very different than how Tamia and I work. And so um, I think for us, we're in sort of unusual professions and professions that have an element of glamour and excitement and whatever you want to call it. But we're not like we're actually pretty simple. We're homebodies. We don't do a whole lot. We I think enjoy being at home. And I think that we talked earlier about balance. I think that gives us balance. It gives us stability. It gives us a foundation. One thing I realized with her, and I learned this from her early on. Here she is, this young, attractive, talented um, young lady going out to LA, pursuing her career, and that's a crazy world. And she had it all figured out when we met. And she knew then, like, this is crazy. This isn't real. This isn't something that I want to like consume me. Where I'm caught up. Like, I'm like, oh man, this is like, I'm out here in LA. Like and she was the least bit caught up. And um, so yeah, I just think making, family a priority, things that are real. My parents, this is probably bad. My parents used to call us the boring couple. They're like, man, y'all don't do nothing. Like, y'all just stay at home. Like, and so, I mean, that's what we like to do. She wants to go tour and do shows and put music out. That's fine. And, I'm half Jamaican. I got 6, 7, 8 jobs. But I just like to be home, the kids, each other. It just gives you a solid foundation. And so, but, communication, I think one of the things is being, I've learned to be more vulnerable and I think learn that intimate is not just physical, and intimate is also sharing, and this notion of like being strong and being a man and and holding it in and always projecting strength. But I think I've learned even in recent years to share my insecurities, my flaws, and I think that just creates a greater level of intimacy. So we're not who we were 26 years ago. You grow, you evolve, and you hope and pray that you grow and evolve together. But I think, I mean, it's just a number of things. I don't have the answers, but I think it's something that you intentionally work on every day and you make it a priority. And sometimes you get on each other's nerves. Sometimes she's like, "Don't you have a game to call or something?" Or, and don't you, but we've somehow, some way, we're here almost at 23 years of marriage, which is crazy.